We all know that the make or break for a podcast episode is not the quality of the video or the audio, but the quality of the guest that you bring in. It's about how clearly they can explain their thoughts and how well you can tap into their expertise. So tell me, from all the interviews that you've done, what makes a difference between a great guest and a meh guest for you?
So, what makes a great podcast guest? Over the years, I've had the pleasure and opportunity to interview hundreds of guests, primarily creatives, professional creatives, filmmakers, photographers, musicians. I've also had the opportunity to interview executives, startup executives. And I think there are a number of things that make a really great podcast guest. I think first and foremost, you got to make sure you have guests who know their stuff. You want to make sure you're bringing in guests who can speak specifically to the issues and the points that are germane to your audience. But beyond that, you want someone who knows their stuff so well that they can just riff. They can answer any questions that you throw at them. They can give new and exciting ways of how to address the particular topic at hand. If it's someone you're interviewing because their life is interesting. You're just kind of interviewing about their life. There's someone who is fun. They can tell entertaining stories, and someone that a person is going to be interested in listening to and hearing and entertaining. So to that, and brings to the next thing is that they aren't afraid to uh, answer tough questions and ask tough questions. It's back and forth conversation. So some of the best guests are the ones who love to grapple with those tough topics. But number three, and I think something that really makes a podcast guest stand out and go to the next level is somebody who can bring in new and different perspectives from other disciplines. An example I have today, I was being interviewed for a podcast and we were talking about filmmaking and video production and the impact that AI is having on creativity. And as we were talking about these things in the progress of technology, I was using as an example, I was bringing in religion and philosophy, and so we were getting to these sort of uh, uh, really interesting and provocative topics that aren't directly related to like filmmaking and video production, but the analogies and the metaphors I was bringing in is something that would speak to the human spirit. People will be able to understand it, and I think the great podcast guests that I had over the years are the ones who can do that. They can bring in philosophy and art and culture and religion and politics and all these other things that may not necessarily be 100% connected to the topic that you're interviewing them about, but it brings some life to the topic. It brings an interesting way and perspective of looking at the topic. And the best guests are the ones that can help people look at something that even your audience may not have considered, and that just kind of elevates whatever it is that you're talking about. So great podcast guests, they know their stuff, they can speak freely on it. They're fun and entertaining to listen to. They can tell great stories. They're great storytellers. And they can bring in these new and provocative topics that may not necessarily, when you first think about it, connect to the topic, but they are able to bring it together in a way that is transcendent. And lastly, I would just say it goes without saying, uh, it really helps if they have good podcast equipment. First and foremost, a great mic. It's so frustrating listening to all these podcasts where the host has a great mic and the guest sounds like they're on an iPhone or some crappy, computer microphone. Microphones are cheap. Send your guests a $25 Amazon gift certificate to get a USB mic if they don't have one, if it's going to mean you get a better podcast out of it. So make sure they have a good podcast mic, especially if it's an audio podcast. And if it's a video podcast, most computer cameras aren't that bad. But that get mic is a must if you really want to have a top-notch podcast. So those are my tips for from a long, long time of doing podcasts. Almost actually it'd be like 20 years this year that I've been doing podcasts on and off. So uh, those are my tips for how to have a great podcast guest.